everyone, we have a special guest with us today, Jonathan Spike. Christina couldn't make it today, so tell us about yourself.
I am Jonathan Spikes, the founder and executive director of the Affirming Youth Foundation. Founded based upon my childhood traumatic experiences of growing up in Libya City, seeing a lot of community violence, being introduced to drugs only when I was in third grade by my father, and experiencing a lot of different things that could have prevented me from rising up and becoming the person that I am today.
Okay. So what was the difference between you going into that life and choosing to fight against that type of lifestyle?
I want to say, sometimes I want to say lucky, but it's not really lucky, but I was given opportunities and experiences and that I took advantage of. And sometimes people come into your life to mentor you, and if you hold on to some of the things that they're teaching you, especially if it's different from the life that you known to have, it can help you and take you a long way.
Yeah. I know a lot of people, you probably know a lot of people that got stuck in that life and wasn't able to fight like you're trying to help these kids.
Right. A lot of people do get stuck in it. And I always wonder, I ask myself, what makes one person be able to transform it and others can't? And we just don't know what it is. It's no easy answer. It just, I think, taking advantage of your opportunities when they present themselves.
I was about to say that. You don't think it's opportunities in the environment you in?
That plays a part in it. But if you only know what you know, when an opportunity presents itself, you may not even realize that's an opportunity. You could turn it down.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's like how parents usually tell kids that, well, girls especially, when all they know is that particular type of guy, and then when that good guy comes around, they don't even know that could be the future wife or husband. And they pretty much turn that down.
Right. I'm studying clinical mental health counseling because of all of this that I'm doing. And we had to do something called a genogram when you look at your family history. And if when I track my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my great-great-grandmother, you can start seeing patterns of behavior that are more generational. So because a certain person acted a certain way back when, it taught your great-grandmother how to act that way, who passed it down to your grandmother, who passed it down to your mother, and then you wind up passing the same things down to your children.
Just like the KKK.
Yes, exactly.
How they teach hate to their...
Teach hate to one, and then it continues generational, becomes generational.
Okay. I was listening to one of your interviews, and you was talking about the story about your two brothers.
Yes. When I was 6 years old, I had a 14-year-old brother going outside to take the trash out, and he was just shot in the leg. Someone was shooting at their girlfriend, and my brother happened to walk outside at that time, and he was shot in the leg. He came back in the house with blood everywhere and, like crying in the middle of the floor. And all these people came into our house, and all these neighbors and the police and the paramedics and my mother, and just like it never happened the next day. They didn't talk to me about it. They didn't mention it. My brother was in the hospital. He got released, and it's just like it never happened. So he was 14 years old.
And you was
6 years old.
Well, you was
Yeah, I was 6 years old.
Dang.
So I didn't understand it. Of course, I couldn't really process everything that was going on. But it was just the most amazing thing is we never discussed it, never had a conversation about it. And then when I turned 21 years old, that brother survived. But when I turned 21 years old, I had another brother. David, he was 28, and he was shot in Miami off of 18th Avenue and 68th Terrace. And the same thing happened. We went there. I saw the body laying in the street with the flies coming out of his mouth, and we just stood there, watched this thing. It was painful. It hurted. I didn't cry. I just stood there and I took it all in. And we never discussed it. We planned the funeral and went on with our lives as if it never happened. And eventually, from my first brother, Rod, and to David, I was holding all these emotions inside that I never had a chance to express, and that we as a family and the community, we never discussed. And it began to show up in my life in different ways. Self-sabotage, just wilding out, doing all kind of crazy things because I was suffering. Didn't know it at the time, but I was suffering from violent exposure.
Violent exposure?
Yes, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. Yes, because of the violence that I had witnessed with my family, with my brothers. Mm-hmm. And we never talked about it. Talked about it.
So how does that affect your mental, and how do you cope with your brother dying, and cold blood? Does that make you want to get does that make you have vengeance, or you want to get revenge, or how do you cope with?
I think we cope by numbing the pain. Act like we never talked about it, because in the hood, I grew up in Scott Projects in Miami. And so my hood experiences is things happen, but we don't discuss it. We don't address it. We don't bring it up. You just go on with your lives as if it never happened. But we do know now that something is happening to you when these things happen and you don't discuss it. A lot of times, even me working in the school now, a lot of the parents say what goes on in my house, it stays in my house. And so you have a lot of children that are dealing with issues that they're afraid to talk about, or they're shut down, won't even talk to you about it, because the same thing is being passed on to this new generation. What goes on in my house stays in my house. And I guess that's the same thing my mother understood it to be at that time. So, yeah.
Wow.
And then your brother, did the police ever told you what happened, like how the whole thing started?
No, I don't. All I knew, the 28-year-old David or Rod was the first one. I was 6 years old.
The one that got murdered.
Murdered. David was arguing with some guy over a girl, but I didn't never follow the case. I didn't follow up with the case. I don't even know who the guy is that did it.
You did it on purpose?
Yeah.
You just don't want to know.
It's not that I didn't want to know. It's just that I was already conditioned that we don't know. You just move on with your life as if it never happened.
I mean, there's a lot of crimes, especially dealing with black people, that just goes unsolved.
Right. I think whoever the guy is, I think he did get arrested, and I believe he went to jail. Mm-hmm. But I never followed up with it. I just never followed up with it. I think about it.
Do you think that you need to confront him to get some
closure?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Would it?
Get in front of him, maybe get an apology face to face or something like that,
or see where his mindset is at to see if he changed. And
I don't know. I don't think so. As for me, I don't think I need that from him. Mm-hmm. I think my purpose is not so much of going back to what he did, mm-hmm. but how it affected me and how I can empower myself to go out and help other people who may be going through the same thing, so they don't have to suffer some of the same things that I had to suffer from. So I don't think my healing or my moving on with my life is not so much of going back to ask him what he felt about it, because quite frankly, what he felt, what he was going through, how he feels today, it doesn't have an effect on me.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is learning and growing from that experience and going back into my culture to help other people who may be experiencing some of the same things.
What do you got to say for young people? Because your brother was 20? 21?
He was 28. 28. I'm sorry. When he got
That's still considered pretty young. Mm-hmm. People that are going through with situations where they're dealing with a girl, mm-hmm. and they get caught up in that situation. How would you tell someone, how would you tell your son to diffuse himself away from that female or that situation?
I would really get them, number one is to start getting people to think about their actions, because a lot of times we're impulsive. We are impulsive beings, especially when you grow up in neighborhoods you see a lot of community violence, so it doesn't affect you to see someone get shot. It doesn't affect you to see a guy beating up a girl. It doesn't affect you to see girls jumping on other girls or guys beating up each other. You just watch it. We film it nowadays. We don't say anything. Spring break, right. Like the girl on South Beach. Yeah. The guy just turned around and cold clocked her, knocked her out, and she's just laying on the ground and we put out the video cameras. So it doesn't shock the consciousness of seeing that, because it has become part of the culture and it has become normalized behavior. Even on the case in New York City with the guy kicked the elderly lady.
Oh, I see that.
I seen that video.
Oh, I saw the World Star. I watch World Star a lot. It helps me. World Star has some good training videos, I call them. Educational opportunities. But the guy kicked the 80-something-year-old lady in the face and kicked her a couple of times. And people just videotaped it. Nobody said, dude, that's an old lady. That could be your grandma.
Why did he kick her?
No reason at all.
It doesn't really matter.
Right, well, why it doesn't matter exactly?
No, it doesn't matter, but because sometimes there's some dumb.
Even if she did,
87 years old. What can she do?
Yeah.
Yeah, she can't do nothing.
Right, so he kicked her in the face, and it got uploaded to World Star, and somehow the police was alerted, and they put it in the media, and they caught the guy. He was only 28 years old, working as a chef in New York. And so seeing these experiences doesn't shock the consciousness if you're so familiar with these things happening. So if my son, thank God, he didn't have to live and grow up in the same environment, but if he was to grow up in that same environment, or the guys that live in those type of environments, they'll be more impulsive. You know, you do something to me, I got to do something to you back.
That true, and you don't know what the girl is saying to your son or that guy. She could be playing both sides, and next you know it, the two guys are fighting over her.
Right.
And then something happens, and then you don't think about your reaction until it's after the fact sometimes.
That's exactly what I mean by we so impulsive that we don't take the moment to think about what should I do in this situation instead of just doing it.
And a lot of people are prideful, and they have they're so caught up in oh, you said something to me, and now I gotta
retaliate because of the media or the people around you, the environment.
Right.
Because in school, if you ain't do nothing back, what
you soft.
Yeah,
you soft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
so it kind of forced you.
It's not worth anything, honestly. Oh,
but you're not thinking that. You're not thinking at that age. Though. At that age, you're like, I can't look like this.
Yeah,
I can't look like
right. And in that moment, it does mean a lot. Because apparently, if your pride is that's all you have to hold on to, it does mean a lot. And so it's just like having $1 million in your pocket.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anything else, so all I have to hold on to is my pride. So it does mean a lot. And that's why they retaliate, and that's why they respond back in the negative ways that they do.
Yeah.
But it has consequences to it.
In most culture, pride is what they hold on top. Like that's value to them.
Don't let this family down. You remember what your last name is.
Yeah.
You know, don't you come in here look like that. You know, what your mom always told you. Somebody hit you, what you better do.
Hit them back.
Okay, there you go. We taught it. It's been passed down generation to generation to generation, and it's still manifesting itself today.
So I know you heard about the Nipsey Hussle situation where he was gunned down. I think he was at his store helping somebody else get clothing
for his friend that's coming out of jail. He was getting clothing for his friend that's coming out of jail.
And then I guess he had an altercation with this gentleman, and the gentleman came back and murdered him.
Right.
Yeah, he told the guy that I don't want you around here because you're a snitch. And this is somebody that they used to be in the same crew together, something like that. He used to be around. I don't know if he was in the same crew. He used to be around him, so they know each other. And he tells the guy that I don't want you around here because you're a snitch. And
Nipsey told the guy that.
Yeah, he told the guy that. The guy leaves, comes back, and then we don't know what happened after that.
So they didn't have a physical altercation?
It wasn't physical. I think his pride got hurt.
Right.
And he came back and murdered. But one thing I was struggling with is how you allow your pride to give you 100 years in a prison cell. I don't think it's worth your pride being hurt.
Right, and that's what we're saying. Right, you don't think about that. He wasn't thinking about that. So, and like I said, okay, when we say pride encompasses a whole bunch of things, right? Especially if you already don't have anything. So if you already don't have anything to fight for, the gain or anything like that, taking my pride is all I have left. So you may not think it's valuable enough to go to jail over, but apparently if there's nothing else to lose, you take my pride too. You call me a snitch in the streets.
Yeah, nothing else to lose.
You have nothing else to lose. Right. So so the question would be, how can we change the culture where pride is not the only thing that we have? We have so much to lose. You know what I mean? Like what you're doing right here, this show, your platform and everything that you are doing in your own lives, you have something to lose. So you're gonna go hang with people that have something to lose too, because when you realize you have something to lose, that's just certain behaviors, certain people you're just not gonna tolerate around you, right? But when you don't have anything to lose, you're gonna carry that type of energy, those type of people that will tell you, man, he called you a snitch. You better go bust that dude. You better go handle that.
It's crazy though.
Yeah.
But that's how the hood is, the environment. And I was listening to somebody, and they were like, first thing business people ask you, or anybody that's going to invest in your company, is, are you willing to die for this company? Are you willing to die for this? And that goes back to what you were saying. If you're not willing to lose anything, that's crazy.
How do you feel about people of his stature going back to his neighborhood and having a business in his neighborhood and being among the people, but it's a risk because anytime like something like that can happen.
Okay, so it wasn't a random act of violence. It was somebody he knew.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a risk for him to go back into the neighborhood to do it, because it wasn't like somebody he didn't know just came up and shot and killed him. It's somebody within his circle. So it wasn't the neighborhood that was the risk. It was the person that knew him or he was affiliated with, that got into the altercation with, that made the choice to do that. So I'm in the hood, I'm in the same area that I grew up in with the Affirming Youth Center that we have, and the kids that we serve are not the ones, or the people in the neighborhood are not the ones that are causing me problems, or that cause him problems. It's somebody that he knew that was in his circle.
So it's always somebody in the circle.
And not necessarily, but the question was, how is it a risk to go back into your neighborhood? Mm-hmm. I don't feel like it's a risk to go back into your neighborhoods, because what happened to him was not related to some random person. Did I answer? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't a risk. I think it's a good thing if you could go back into your neighborhood to empower other people.
But that's what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you have, like you said, people that have nothing to lose around you,
mm-hmm.
which often happens when you go back to a poverty neighborhood,
mm-hmm.
you are some kind of a target if you were to have any kind of an altercation.
I think what it
being
is,
around people with nothing to lose.
That too, and people that you grew up with, they see you come back with nice cars and this. They see you living a Hollywood life, and then they in their head they're saying, how come that's not me? Why couldn't it be that? Or
right, true.
So jealousy too.
Or I helped them in the beginning to even get there.
True.
Now he cut me off. I'm not with him no more.
True.
So in their head they're like, oh, he thinks he's Hollywood now. So they try to go rob him, and sometimes when the situation turns left, they end up shooting somebody.
But think about I know y'all younger than I am, but think about the 80s and the 90s when we grew up in the projects, and the guy that was selling the drugs started making money, and he started coming up, and he started to buy the cars, he could have all the girls, he could have the nice clothes, he could put all the gold teeth in his mouth, and then the other ones get jealous. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. Some drug dealers sold the drugs to their neighbors, to their mamas, to their best friend mamas, knowing the consequences of them getting on the drugs. But they did it anyway and destroyed neighborhoods and destroyed families, right? All in the name of making $1. Do you blame them?
I think the drug story is two ways. So you have to put yourself in their position, like when they're laying down at night thinking about how they starving. Mm-hmm. So is it bad or good? I don't like to use bad or good. I say if I'm in that position and I'm hungry and I got a baby that's hungry, are you gonna go to any means to make sure they're fed, mm-hmm. even if it means destroying yourself? Maybe not. Maybe there's a different way. You got to be more creative.
So the lens that we judge it on is not the same as just looking at it so black and white.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot of gray that goes into it. But it begs the question is, what created that society in the first place?
Poverty.
There you go. That's a common denominator in a lot of these situations that is happening. Poverty. If you don't have access to opportunities, what do you expect to happen?
So, do you think money is the root of all evil?
No, it's not. Money is not the root of all evil. Money is a very good thing, because money is not a living being. Mm-hmm. Humans are the ones that has to give money whatever power it's going to have.
So does that go the same way as guns too, the gun laws, NRA? Because people are saying guns are not bad; it's the people using it.
How do you feel about guns?
Okay. I go to the gun range. Mm-hmm. I like shooting. It's very therapeutic, cathartic. There's something about the trigger. You see the fire going out the gun. Mm-hmm. It feels good, right? I mean, to me, it feels good. So, when they have these debates about guns, I'm always caught in the middle, because I take my children to the gun range and let them shoot 15, 16. Let them shoot the guns, because it was more for a sport, mm-hmm. and they enjoyed it. So when you ask me what do I feel about guns, I understand that in poverty-stricken communities, that guns are not used for sports. They used to kill people, mm-hmm. right? And so I think for me there has to be some type of balance between the two. And whatever that balance is, I don't know my own self. Mm-hmm. But I do know that if you got a lot of people walking around just shooting each other, you need to do something about that. I lost my brother, the gun violence, right? But at the same time, if you're doing something, just enjoy yourself to go to a gun range and for sport.
Do you think they have to make it more strict to purchase or carry a gun, or do you feel like it's discretion of the people to stop killing?
Okay, my thing is, I feel that you should have background checks. I feel that mental illness, mental health is very important if you're going to be for gun ownership. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that you can create some systems that make it where it's not so easy for anybody to just go purchase a gun like it is now. So I don't have any problems with that. Putting barriers and roadblocks in place to try to stop someone from just like the bump stock and they could kill multiple people at one time. I think those type of things we don't need or, should be regulated in a different way.
What about a certain type of guns?
The machine guns?
Machine guns, AK-47s and all of those things like that. We had a ban on those before, like President Clinton era, back in that time. There was a ban on assault rifles.
Assault rifles, yeah.
And then the next president, I think it was Bush, lifted it. Allowed it to expire and they did not renew it. Mm-hmm. And so now we have all these things right here. So what is it? I don't know. I don't know if they should be. I think some in urban areas, probably so.
Yeah. But then you'll cause a riot because there are black people that like their guns and they feel like they're not doing anything wrong.
And they feel threatened.
So like even in New York, you do like hard time if you caught with a gun. Do you think laws like that, like if you cannot carry a gun only like maybe at home or something like that?
Well, I'm going to say it this way, and this is what I do know to be true, that a black person carrying a gun is different than a white person carrying a gun. The police stop a black person carrying a gun, this automatically put your hands up. Even though we got the same right, they would surround you, put your hands up. White folks carrying a gun, they just carrying the gun. They don't get the same treatment. It's not as an aggressive tactic. It wasn't the way you get the gun from. Instead of it's their right to have the gun. And so automatically we are already put in the other category and position. So when we say gun rights, even with the NRA, they always saying about gun rights, but it's only gun rights for a certain segment of the society. Mm-hmm. They don't go out there and fight for urban black guys who they're afraid of. They don't go out there and fight for their gun rights.
Yeah.
They don't.
Did you hear about this president candidate talking about he wants to give people in poverty money every month?
Yes, I read that, and it sounds good. Is it going to happen?
I don't know.
Okay. I grew up. Let me tell you the most interesting thing. Like I said, we're doing this program at Liberty City Elementary School, and I grew up in that area. So we have to call the parents to come to the school to fill out the paperwork. Mm-hmm. And the parents say, I have to wait till I get off work. And I was just telling this week, I was saying, how strange and odd that is for me to hear that the parents say they have to take off work to come and fill out the assessment. Because I grew up when there was welfare, mm-hmm. giving money to poor people every month, right? There was a welfare system. Mm-hmm. And so the women and their boyfriends will hang around the projects by the mailbox to wait till the first of the month when the mail carrier bring the checks. So they didn't have jobs. They didn't have anything. And so you asking me this question, I've been going through this whole thing all week. It was a beautiful thing for me to go back to the same community where I grew up in and see these women coming from the hospital jobs, coming from the post office jobs, coming from their retail jobs to come and see about their children. So I tie that back into what you're saying. It's not going to happen. We already did it. We already know that it don't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, just talk. Don't get caught up.
What about the reparations talk? A lot of people are talking about.
They just talk. You think they're going to give us 40 acres in the mule? They would have been there.
So what would you like for that, like reparation, like for black people?
Who's going to win your vote and what do they have?
Like what's fair? Because you know how the Indians got their own thing, and then
that is true. That is.
Mm-hmm. I think the Jewish people got their own thing.
Their own thing, right? Yeah. Everybody got their own thing except us.
Well, yeah. So what's fair for us as people?
Well, I guess I have to entertain. What do you mean by fair?
Or what do we deserve? What do that we endured for past, I don't know,
In my opinion, it probably starts with education, just like more funding of maybe black colleges.
Okay. Let me break this down. Do they really want us educated?
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's one thing they took away from us when.
They never gave it to us.
Yeah, we had to go.
We never had
We had to go
it.
our way to get it.
Slaves couldn't read.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we became sharecroppers. All we did is sit around all day. They couldn't read. They couldn't. So when we started learning to read and write, then they put other barriers in place to prevent you from rising above it.
Mm-hmm.
Student loans is another way they keep us held down, because once you get all those loans, you can't pay them back.
Another thing, there's a people. They have like some type of people are always saying black people this, black people that. Black people owe the most loans. Black people owe the most on welfare. There's a statistic that white people are more.
They are on more welfare.
Yeah.
Yeah, than black people, but of course they have to sell that because because the media portrays a certain image, right? Just like I said, the NRA talking about they for gun rights, but they're only for gun rights for certain segments of the population. So everybody plays into this to keep us oppressed and to keep us down. Okay, so paying people back for slavery is not going to happen. Education, they never gave it to us, and they put in structural barriers to keep us from getting it anyway. And then if you do get it, then you got so much money to pay back. It's like, oh my God, I got a noose on my neck all over again. This wasn't designed just because. It's always been designed this way to keep us down.
Yeah.
So what is fair? I don't know what is fair. Okay? You don't know, because if they give you something, they're going to build something else to stop you from getting that too.
Yeah.
There's a wall on top of the wall.
Right. And so, I don't know. I go back to opportunities, though. Opportunities are fair. When you give people from certain areas, economically depressed areas, opportunities to rise above their circumstances. I remember I went to a career development class to learn how to work. And although when they were teaching me how to work, they were teaching me how to punch a time clock. So we had to go to the training class. I was in high school at the time. You had to go to the training class, and then you go in there and you punch a time clock for $3.35 an hour, because that's what the minimum wage was back then. So we had to punch a time clock. It wasn't training us to be owners and administrators. It was training us to be all over again. Yeah. And so they were teaching you skills and ingraining in you that you can't rise above. But they was giving us an opportunity.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
How you feel about the school scandal that happened, where parents and Hollywood people were paying their kids to go into college, and now people of poverty or people of color that lost opportunities to go to those schools, even though they worked so hard for it?
I would say this, and I'm going to be honest with you. All of us who has a child in this world will do whatever we can to get them a competitive, even if it's unfair, advantage. We all would do that. Now, do we do it on that type of scale? Because they have locked us out of a lot of things, and then they get in it, and they keep the bragging rights that, oh, my child went to Harvard, even though they paid their way. Even Donald Trump kids went to the University of Pennsylvania after he gave a big donation, right? So I'm conflicted on that, because had it not been for people giving me an opportunity, had it not been for somebody interviewing me and you hearing about the interview and you say, come in here because I want to hear your story, everybody don't get the same favor. And favor ain't fair, right? So I'm gonna give my children an advantage if I can.
Yeah, but you know your kid don't even want to be there, but you're forcing them to go to school.
See, that's different. That's
because
different.
You didn't hear about the girl that said, I don't even want to go to the school. I just want to party and just play games.
And so you hear these stories and you sit there and you're like, God dang, what in the world are we allowing these children to become? So unlike what I experienced when I was a child, and I had those traumatic experiences happen in my life, and we didn't talk about it and nobody addressed it, we're now addressing them. And that's what we're doing, just going with these kids and their families and talking with them, teaching them. We use trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a cognitive to behavior therapy looks at your thoughts, your belief, and your actions. So like when we were talking earlier, we say, what do you think about this? So we always have a thought about something. And if we have a thought about something happens, we think about it, right? And then we respond to it. And so you got to always, because of a belief that you have about the thing that happened. So we always have to ask ourselves, is it true when you first think about something? Somebody stepped on your toe. Are they disrespecting me? I can feel they disrespected me, but you have to ask yourself, is it true? Or maybe it was just a mistake. So most of the time, somebody step on your toe, put dirt on your brand new shoes, you're going to want to fight them. Yeah. But that don't mean they intentionally try to do it. So we're going teaching them about thoughts, beliefs, and then the behaviors that come after it. You stepped on my toe. I know you meant to do it. And so I'm going to beat you, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to kill you. We're trying to get them to change that action by getting you to think about the thing first. Think about what you're doing. Don't be so impulsive and reactionary to everything that goes on in your life, because it leads you to go picking up a gun, going shooting good people like Nipsey Hussle and all these other people that are being murdered senselessly, to gun violence and all these other things that we're doing.
I wanted to talk about a couple things. I'm going to start with this. I talked to a couple girls before, like a couple years ago, and almost every girl that I know or talked to before had got molested before. And what I realized in talking to them is that sometimes that whatever happened to them in the past comes into a relationship, and then they look at the guy as a father figure when really they should be looking at the guy as somebody they're dating or married to.
Oh, they look at the guy as their protector.
Yeah.
And they put all the responsibilities
really
on the guy.
Exactly.
And then the girl and the guy have a baby, and then they pass those same bad traits. I ain't gonna call them bad. Those same traits that creates problems in the relationship and to the children.
Sometimes
and then the children,
guy ends up even because of those problems.
It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
I'm not here to be
it's
everything.
Like 2 kids. It's like you're dealing with 2 kids, the guy,
right.
The kid, and then the girl.
So the way you handle that is, if the girl has been molested and she didn't get any mental health counseling. I'm a big proponent of mental health counseling. It works. It works. It works. It works. It really works. It really, really works. Because it gets you to look at the thoughts, the belief, and the behaviors, right?
I try to talk to a couple people about that, and all I can say is, no, they're just taking your money. They're just taking your money.
It works. Or all I need is Jesus.
Oh yeah, that's
all I need. Me and Jesus go work it out.
But I just need to pray.
I just need to pray. But there are trained professionals like myself that look at these things and get you to see them in other ways, so they don't have to interfere with your new relationships and in your future because it was the past. Sometimes you have to go back and address the past. Sometimes you can't go back to address the past because it's too painful and it cause you more dysfunction. So we just have to move forward. But that's why we use trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy, to address the narrative that you tell yourself. Because when we go through bad things, we develop a story around it. And sometimes, and most times, we tell ourselves the story over and over and over again, that it becomes a fable or a fairy tale. Yes, a tragic event that happened, but the memories is the one that caused the problems, because you associate the wrong type of memories with the situation, right? Something happened, but I was able to survive it and I got over it. But no, something happened and it prevented me from having a good relationship, and it prevented me from being able to learn in school, and prevented me from having a good life. And so I decided to use drugs to help cope with the pain and the trauma of it.
And then I did not know this, but childhood trauma affects the brain development and hormones.
Yes.
That's very crazy.
Because you're on fight or flight. When you're having a traumatic experience, you're always on fight or flight. That's why you can say hello to somebody, what you want? You know?
Always aggressive.
Yeah, very aggressive. Yeah. Because you already been triggered, and then that's your safety response. Okay, I'm not going to let this happen to me again. So somebody stepped at me, I'm like,
yeah.
Right? And so your brain is constantly working. And so when you learn techniques and skills to give your brain a break, then your brain can stop being on fire all the time. It can calm down. Your emotional responses could begin to calm down. And that's why things like mental health counseling is very, very important.
Is that what they use in when you have anger management problems?
Mm-hmm. They use most all therapy that you're going to see is going to use some type of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
You don't think the pills and drugs that they're giving on those sometimes can is bad too, because they do misdose people too.
Sometimes you do need the drugs along with therapy when you're first starting, because sometimes you could be in such a bad state that you have so much depression going on that you can't function. So sometimes you do need some medication in the beginning as you continue your journey through mental health counseling to also address it. I don't believe in just taking medication without therapy. I believe therapy should be in all situations, because the more you talk about it and begin to get coping skills and learn how to cope with these traumatic experiences, the less triggers and emotional responses you're going to have to it.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then I also want to go back to the childhood trauma. Depending how bad it is, it's a risk for heart disease and lung cancer too, I heard.
Not only heart disease, lung cancer, it's a risk for skills achievement. If you look at a lot of people who, you have people in the community that just can't get over the hump because they've been suffering from trauma. A lot of the things that we see that manifests itself in the community, it's because something happened to that person. People don't just wake up in the morning and say, oh, I just think I ain't going to do nothing with my dang life. We'll just lay up and smoke weed and do drugs all day. Some people do, but the majority don't. Something happened along the way in this life, or something they believed happened along the way in this life that made them become that person. So they've been conditioned all over again. And this probably was passed down for somebody else in their family all over again. Generational. Anytime you're looking at trauma, look at the generations. Look at the parents and the grandparents and see how all that stuff keep manifesting itself over and over again.
I was going to ask you this since you brought that up. Is it true that you can't help the children until you help the family?
That's why we said children and families. You got to help the family. Because I could treat this child all day long, but when they leave that school, where they going?
Back home.
Back to the family, right? So if you get the family involved in it, it's a win-win for everyone. You have to get the family involved. Because one person can say one thing that goes against directly what you're trying to help the child with.
And now they got to decide who's telling the truth, him or my parents, the person I'm dealing with.
Right. And they shouldn't have that responsibility. They shouldn't.
And then how important is it to understand a child's culture when you work with them?
Culture is everything. Culture is absolutely everything. We have assessments that we have to give to children. And one of the questions asked, do you like to go downtown? So when I asked my team, it was 5 of us, I said, what does downtown mean to you? So you got one person that said downtown, for me, downtown meant going to the store. Because we didn't have malls in the hood. So we used to have to catch the bus to go downtown to go shopping, right? So to somebody else, downtown meant something sexual. For real.
I don't like crossover.
Downtown meant something sexual. And then somebody else, downtown meant something like they're going for entertainment or something like that. So I am very upset because when I look at these assessments that's for black and brown kids, what the hell does downtown mean? Do you know what downtown mean?
No.
In today's context, what does downtown mean to you?
It can mean 2 things: going down, like, or you're going downtown to go to like some place downtown, like a location.
Right, but for what though?
I was thinking like a party.
A party, right?
Only time I really go downtown.
Food, hotel, anything involving entertainment wise.
Right, so it's ambiguous, but they keep making these assessments built on middle class white men, and then we have to adapt them to black and brown people. So one thing I want to do with the study is, once we get the results, I want us to begin to develop assessments that are culturally appropriate for black and brown people, because we don't know what downtown means. We just don't know what it means. But that's a question on the assessment. So yeah, being culturally competent.
I wonder what was the dictionary definition of that downtown.
It's gonna be. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, culturally competence is very, very important to understand the culture that you're dealing with. Kids respond differently in different cultures. This is nothing we run across. You have grandparents that's taking care of the children because the mama's on drugs, but the grandparents never went through the court system to get the legal custody, right? But the child stays with the grandparent. Grandparents feed them, clothe them, and everything like that. But when you go into a government system like a school, that's a no-no.
You can't do that.
You can't do that. But in that culture, you're going to tell the grandparents, no, they got to stay with the drug mama until you go through the court system and get full custody.
Yeah, I just looked for the definition. It says of, in, or characteristic of a central area or main business and commercial area in a town or a city.
Okay. So do we go downtown when, when you want to go somewhere? We don't hang out downtown, do we? Okay, we hang out on Las Olas, or I don't know we out here in Parkland, so I don't know where you go in Parkland. Do you go all the way downtown for London?
Go fishing or something.
See that? So
when is your next events, and do you have anything planned for the next couple of months?
Yes, this study is the biggest thing that we're doing. I'm very excited about it, to get the first wave of results to see if blending the trauma-focused cognitive therapy curriculum with social and emotional skills. So we got to go and teach kids how to identify emotions, which means that when I feel anger, there is something that happens in your body physiologically first to let you know that you're getting upset. But we don't normally pay attention to that. All we know is we just punch somebody. So before you get angry, your stomach probably hurts, or it gives you a feeling, an emotion, or you start sweating, or you start breathing fast. You start balling up your fists. These are all signs to say, I am getting upset. And once you know that you're getting upset, you can start taking appropriate actions to either act out on it or to go another way.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and I have a question I always ask people before we leave. So, is it important to get your spouse a birthday gift?
Why not? Yes, well, I'm a cancer survivor, right? So I never considered birthdays a big thing until I got diagnosed with cancer. I got diagnosed with cancer in 2013, and I was given a 3-year survival. It's 2018 now, so I'm 5 years, 19 now. So it's 5 years, thank you God. So ever since the cancer diagnosis, I go all out for birthdays. It never really meant anything to me. You didn't have to give me anything for my birthday. Well, when I see how hard I had to
fight it,
to overcome it, and then to go back and work and continue this work that God blessed me to do, I'm gonna celebrate that thing. So yes,
you making me want to take my birthday seriously.
Yes,
I don't even care about my birthdays no more.
It is a milestone. And if you could see it as that, it's a milestone.
Every year you're on this earth
you could go back and you can look and see what you accomplished. Or sometimes some years you don't accomplish anything. You're just in that growing mode. Or some years it's gonna be painful. You know, you got to go through the fire.
Yeah.
But it's always good to look back, because if you come out the fire, you did learn something from those experiences that you can celebrate at your birthday.
Okay. That works.
So you get a birthday gift.
I got one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you expected to exchange gifts for only dating with somebody for like a month? And how much money should you spend?
Now that's more personal. And it all depends on your income level. I always say you probably shouldn't spend no more than 20% of what you make.
And then it's like 10% to the tithe, right? Like to church.
Yeah,
like
like
church should be saying.
That's if you want to, but you could tithe in other ways. I mean, I ain't any with nobody religion. But I always look at this before I buy something. I look at how much money I make an hour, right? So if I'm only making $10 an hour and I want to buy this $100 gift, that means I had to work a day and 2 more hours just to afford that gift.
Can't that go back to the type of girl you dating too? Because what if she is bougie, like she high class and she expecting this amount or something, and then you're like not making, like that's more than 20%. Then
well, why don't you do this? If you know her birthday is coming up, start saving weekly and putting aside
saving ahead of time.
Saving ahead of time, yeah. So it don't just absorb all of your money, but you have already put this aside. So you just put a little bit aside, and so when it's time to get it, you're not struggling.
Okay, so just dating somebody for a month, is that fair to give them a gift? Or what if you dated her October, her birthday's in November? Do you get her a gift, or do you just be there? I guess I don't know.
I almost said something.
Go ahead.
It all depends on how intimate the relationship is.
You can get really intimate in a month.
You can. Yeah. I mean, you can burn it up in a month. You know. So I believe it's a personal decision, but just to let somebody know you're thinking about them, and whichever way you can express that is better than nothing.
Words are better than gifts.
Any way you can let them know, because sometimes a gift could be you cooking, or the gift could be you cleaning up the house for them, or the gift could be you giving them a massage. So it all depends on what gift means to you and them. It's relative.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to be creative with it.
So where can everybody find you if they want to get involved with your movement?
Yeah. You can get involved with the trauma-focused cognitive behavior movement. So we go out there and teach these other kids that grew up just like me by Instagram, Affirming Youth, Affirming Youth, Facebook, Affirming Youth, Twitter, Affirming_Youth.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. It's for the culture.
Yeah, for the culture.